On today's episode, we'll talk about how to become an A camera operator when you have no A camera experience, what it's like to shoot scenes with intimacy, Elementary, Evil, Jessica Jones, and of course, when your A operator never does the last shot on Friday night. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out the breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, the musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll. Rolling.
Victor 30 Echo, take two.
Hey, Margaret. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to The Op, the podcast where we talk about operating, operators, and the art of visual storytelling. My name is Dave Comides, and I am your host. And today we've got an operator out of New York. I only mention that because we are over the internet, so if there is some sort of lucky buzzing or something like that, I don't know. That's the reason. But the kids all love the internet, so we're going to try this. But Kate Larose, who is been an operator for, I think you said 6 years now, and some of her credits, not all of them: Evil, Night Sky, Wu-Tang, and American Saga, Madam Secretary, Elementary, A Gifted Man, and before that she was an assistant for quite some time. And the two things I pulled out were Shame, which I think you did additional photography on, and I was on the full movie, so I think that means you worked with Sean Bobbitt probably. And Law and Order SVU, just because every single person in New York has worked on some form of Law and Order, so I probably have to say that legally. Thanks for being here, Kate.
Thanks for having me. I actually think you and I may have worked together a day on Law and Order SVU.
Oh, really? Because I was there for
I,
a little bit. Actually, I was wondering whether we worked together on Elementary, because Law and Order, I came in for like 2 episodes when the operator whose name is escaping me directed. I I can't
you
think of his
know,
name off.
I only remember it because I think it was at that time that you were in the process of collecting all your garbage in your basement. And I remember talking to you about that for a long time.
It would have been after it, because I moved back to Connecticut about a year and a half after that, but it was still pretty present. So we may have
Okay.
very well. If you remember that, then we worked together. So hopefully you
Yes.
remember it fondly.
I thought
Because
that was a great idea.
I was wondering whether we worked on Elementary, because I came and went there quite a bit, doing just day
It's
playing Steadicam. Yeah,
maybe it must have been tandems where we didn't overlap because I was the A focus puller for years.
that was it. Actually, I think I did come and go on tandems. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, well, thank you for being here. So tell me, what's your story? How'd you get to where you are?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is exciting. Um, I moved to New York in 2004. I grew up in New Orleans. I went to school there. They had a pretty good program for film and communications at the University of New Orleans. And I was very lucky when I was there that a lot of movies had started coming through New Orleans. So I was able to intern on some pretty big movies. I did Ray and Runaway Jury. And then while I was working there, all the assistants were from LA. And they were like, "We hate LA. We're going to move here. This is great. We're all coming to New Orleans." So I was like, "Okay, well, sounds like I don't want to go to LA and I can't stay in New Orleans."
Yeah.
And I had a friend of a friend who was a production manager in New York. And I connected with this guy, and he and I started emailing. And I remember him saying, "I'm crewing up on something. I could potentially hire you, but you don't live in New York. Why would I hire someone who doesn't live in New York?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll move to New York." And I did.
Mhm.
This is a very New Orleans statement, but I had a fourth cousin who was living in New York at the time. And I feel like only people from the South know your fourth cousins. And
Okay.
she
Good.
was working at the Olive Garden in Times Square and trying to make it on Broadway. And she had some coworkers who had a room available in Astoria. So I rented this room sight unseen from these guys, and I moved to New York. And then I called the guy, the production manager, and I said, I live in New York now. And he was like, oh, okay. I didn't expect that. I can't hire you, but let me give you some names. And so I started making phone calls and saying that this guy recommended me. And I got on one job during the week as an intern and another movie on the weekends as a paid driver. Now, this was 2004. I didn't have an iPhone. I had never driven in New York in
Oh
my
my
life,
God.
but nobody had driver's licenses here. So if you had one, they'd pay you. And I was driving
Oh
15 past
wow.
and cube trucks through New York, like 22 years old,
I was gonna
crying
say,
in the
how old are you?
Midtown Tunnel, sort of like, what have I
That's
done with my
hysterical.
life?
I've driven
Yeah.
through New York in my 50s and I'm crying in the Midtown Tunnel, so I totally
Yeah, it
understand what
was
you're talking about.
terrifying. I did that for a little bit, and then I remember they sent me on a run. The production office is in Tribeca. They sent me on a run to the set in Jersey. When I got there, the key PA, I don't remember his name, he said, "Are you my new set PA?" And I said, "Yep, you better call the office and tell him I'm here." And I never left.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so PA'd for a while, but I always was interested in camera department, and I kept finding the camera assistants, talking to the camera assistants, and they're like, "Why are you in production if you want to be a camera assistant?" And I'm like, I don't know what else to do. Started looking online for camera jobs, took a camera internship on this movie called Maddie Fresno and the Holoflux Universe,
That's
and
great.
showed up every single day. The first assistant was this amazing woman, Jen Scarlata. She's now an electrician. And she helped me, she taught me what I need to know. And by the end of the job, they paid me a little bit of money and put me on the crew list as the second AC. And so then, you just take that and you go the next one and the next one, the next
Sure.
one. I think Law and Order was my first break into TV, and that was through an incredible assistant named John Floresca. And I had done an indie film with him, and he recommended me to Tom Weston. And then Tom started calling me to day play on SVU, which is then how I got Gifted Man, which then snowballed into Elementary. And then here I am,
Well, there you go. So, wait, Law and Order SVU or Law and Order the Mothership?
SVU.
SVU. Okay. Oh, so
Yeah.
that's really where you were you a first AC on that?
I was a first. I was kind of always a first. I seconded a little bit in 2004, 2005. And then my really good friend Damon LeMay wrote, directed, and shot a zombie movie in Rutland, Vermont. And he paid me to be the focus puller on that, knowing that I didn't know how to pull focus. And he was like, "Come up, work on this, and I'll teach you how to pull focus." And it was on film. It was a CP16, which I knew
Oh,
because we had those at the University of New Orleans. So
oh yeah.
again, you kind of fudge. Oh yeah, I know all this. I can do this.
Let me
And
guess, was it a CP16 with that like old ingenue zoom that always was on the CP16?
yeah, and I pulled focus off the lens, off the barrel.
Yeah, of
Just put
course.
tape and little markers,
Yep.
and yeah, and Damon and the DP just held my hand through that and taught me how to do it. And then I just kept finding little jobs as a focus puller and kept taking them.
Wow.
So when I did join the union, I joined as a first and had been doing a bunch of indie movies. One of them was a tier one. That's where I met John Floresca. So I didn't second or load very long. I mostly pulled focus.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean to have your first sort of union gig be Law and Order SVU when it was probably what only 32 years into its into its run or
I think
whatever.
that was like season 11 or
Yeah.
12, if I
But that
remember
show,
correctly.
like most of those, it was a little bit of, it's like a little bit of a machine, right? And
Oh, absolutely.
you just, I mean, it's a great place to like hone your skills. There's no question about it. But
Yeah.
they
And,
just have it
prior
dialed
to
down.
that, I had been doing so many art films, which were incredible. And you feel like
Yeah.
you're a part of something and you're making something. But I just remember the first time after lunch, they came around with a tray of warm cookies. And I think I sold my soul for a tray of warm cookies. I was like,
Okay,
I don't
that's
want to do
fair
art.
enough.
I want to do this. I want to be on a stage with warm cookies at 3 o'clock every
Yep.
afternoon.
And were you down? Were you on the Law and Order stages when they were in Jersey, or when they were
Hmm?
down by the pier there, like down by the
Jersey,
water?
and then I think I worked on it a little bit when they moved to the pier, and
Yeah.
then Tom left to go do Gifted Man, and that was at Silver Cup East. So, yeah.
Okay.
Then from then I haven't worked on Law and Order since then.
It's funny because I think I day played on Gifted Man too. Was Neil Baer's show? Was he the showrunner on that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I knew Neil. I knew Neil from ER, and I was in New York,
Oh,
and I think Neil gave Tom my name, and I came in for like a day on something. Oh, Jonathan Kaplan was actually directing the episode. Who's a friend of mine also.
yes.
He's a sort of looks like Santa Claus. Uh,
I remember him. I remember him screaming at the background to stop acting because they were never going to make it.
That's Jonathan. He has a heart of
Yeah.
gold, but it's under a lot of crust. Um,
Yes.
that's very funny. Oh, that's really weird that like we have all these like sort of crossings that sort of happened. So
Yeah.
how long did you assist before you jumped up to operating then?
Um, I guess probably I think about 12 years. I was on all of elementary. And then elementary was going to end. Well, let me back up because Ron Fortunato and Tom Houghton, who recently passed, were the DPs on that. They were amazing, and they very much believed in people bumping up. So I got to day play as an operator a lot with them,
Oh, cool.
which was great. And it was mostly a wheels job, so I very much got comfortable working on the wheels and everything.
Right.
And the job was going to end. Elementary had an end to it, and I had decided that I was going to change my card at the end of elementary. And I remember they called us all together and they said, "We have some great news. We're going to get 8 more episodes." And everyone was cheering, and I just knew I couldn't do it. And it wasn't for any reason other than I had made that decision and mentally I was done.
Mentally, you moved on. And also, by the way, for anybody listening who doesn't quite know what that means, is changing your card in the union in the camera local. You're an assistant, or you're an operator, or you're a director of photography, and there's a whole nother conversation. But between being an assistant and an operator, you can't really pop back and forth. Like once you're an operator, and et cetera, within a couple of days. So mentally, you had already moved on. So you didn't do the last 8 episodes with them.
Yeah, I went to Ron and I said, I thanks for everything, but I think I'm ready to do this. And he said, I think you're ready too.
Oh,
And I
that's
was kind of like,
cool.
okay, that feels
Yeah,
good. And so I went into the office and I changed my card the beginning of the year, and it was huge because because of elementary, I was able to buy my apartment. I felt financially comfortable for the first time in years. It
yeah.
was a big deal to leave something that was so comfortable, but I was ready.
Did you have any sort of were you thinking in the back of your mind, am I making a mistake? Because it's
You
hard to
know,
step out of something that goes on its own and just like you can continue, you can continue at it, right? Like even though you may not be
right.
happy.
It felt like the right decision when I did it, and everyone else that worked in the camera department was so ready to bump up, and we were all just staying on that job because it was a good job. And when I said I was leaving, and then everyone else got to reorganize, I
Oh,
knew,
yeah.
despite not having anything lined up to go to, that it was the right decision. I could see we all needed to make these changes.
That's cool. So basically, your leaving opened up a gap where other people got to sort of move it. So at least you feel good about that, whether
Yeah,
even if you don't have a job right away.
right.
And so what was the first thing you? So I'm assuming the first thing you did was as a B camera operator.
Actually, C camera on Madam
Okay.
Secretary.
Oh,
So
okay.
my good friend Laron Kahanov was the DP on Madam Secretary, and they always had C camera days. And
Gotcha.
they shot next door to elementary. So I had been in touch with him about changing my card. And, he said, let me know when you do, and I'll try and get you in the mix. And that really, really worked out for me. The first 6 months of changing my card, I spent quite a few days on Madam Secretary, and was great because that was, Jamie Silverstein and Peter
Yep.
Vietor Hannum were the other operators who
Hmm.
were just very kind and, eager to show me the works at Madam Secretary and give me good tips. And I never felt any pressure. Plus, my friend Damon, who had made the zombie film, was a focus puller there. So I knew a lot of people. Heather Norton was there.
Heather Norton, love Heather
Yeah,
Norton. Yeah. So that's a good group of. So you're basically sort of protected. I mean, you still have to do the job, obviously, but
right.
like you don't feel like people are like breathing down your neck as you're doing something. So as a C
Yeah.
camera operator, now am I crazy? Did Jonathan Brown shoot some of that? Was he there?
He did season one, I believe, and then Laron took
Maybe
over
that.
after that.
Okay, gotcha. And so as the C camera operator, what kind of stuff are you doing on that show as a C camera operator? Is it like big boardroom meetings where you're picking off other people kind of stuff, or
Definitely. Yeah. It would be like when they'd have 6 or 7 cast member in a room and they'd give you
gotcha?
somebody to isolate. I think we were all on headsets. So sometimes they would ask you to swing over to something else or,
Uh-huh.
pick off this or that or, grab an insert kind of deal.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So you're thinking on your feet because I did West Wing, and when I did West Wing, which was early on in the show, it was a single camera show, and Tom Del Ruth, the director of photography, would not allow another camera, basically, and so we would do scenes in the Roosevelt Room with 8 people, and it would take 12 and a half hours.
Wow. The
And I
thing about
remember
oh,
it's
sorry.
tough. Yeah. No. No. Go ahead.
Madam Secretary shot like 8 or 9 hour days. So they knew how
Wow.
to use 3 cameras because
That's
everyone was
great.
committed to that short day.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when you're the C camera operator um, on that show, and it sounds like you were starting out and they were helping you, but are you making decisions about like where you should be on the line and this and that and the other? Or are they basically going, I need you to come in right here and get a shot of this?
That show was very much come in here and get a shot of this. And
Okay,
they had a very specific framing that, you could get notes about while you're in the middle of a shot. The
gotcha.
dolly grips were always they were regular people on the show, so they were very familiar with the look. So it
Uh-huh.
was them also helping me a lot.
Gotcha. And was I'm assuming that this was then a pretty easy jump for you because you sort of fell into something that was sort of so supportive.
It was, I mean, I didn't even have to change the GPS directions in my car. It was the same stage. So
No,
it was
that's very
wonderful. It was,
comforting.
and then, some days, Madam Secretary would wrap and elementary would just be at lunch. And I'd be like, hey, friends, how's it
That's
going over
cool.
there? I'm going
There you
home.
go. Great. And so, how
Yeah.
long did you hang out there?
On and off, I think until the end of their show, I day played with them, which was amazing. But uh, about June of that year, so 6 months after I changed my card, Manuel Billiter, who I had also pulled focus for, called me about doing season 3 of Jessica Jones. And they were doing a little bit of a shift up in the crew. And Mike O'Shea was coming in as A operator. And he asked me if I'd be interested in being the B operator, which was, I think, to this day, one of the best phone calls I've ever gotten in my life. I just remember, trying to be so cool on the phone and then just hanging up and calling anyone I'd ever met. Like, I got
That's
Jessica
so
Jones.
great.
This is incredible.
That's so great. I actually don't know. I know Manuel, and I know Mike O'Shea. I don't know the show. Was that a big show? Was that like a known
Well, New
show?
York had all those Marvel shows happening at that time: Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones.
Gotcha.
So it was sort of a machine in its own right, but they were fun shows. They were action, and that one starred Kristen Ritter. I think that was the only female-led show that they had at the time. So
Hmm.
it was
Yeah,
exciting to get on that show. Absolutely.
that's great. And did you know Mike O'Shea? And well, you knew Manuel. Did you know
I
Mike?
I didn't know Mike at the time. Now I love Mike. He's
He's a great guy.
amazing.
Yeah.
He, in the beginning, I think we had some mutual friends, so we hit it off. But just then, the more I worked with him, the more I adored him.
That's great. So let me ask you a question. when you're going, so it sounds like you basically, okay, you left a scene where you were very comfortable and doing very well. You go into this really supportive environment where you're C camera, and it sounds like you sort of prosper at that, and you're like, okay, I can be a C camera operator, and I'm guessing you're watching and you're learning. Is there then a sort of nervous jump when you're like, now I'm a B camera operator on a show, or was it just sort of like, okay, I get this, and
It
you
was
know,
terrifying. It was terrifying because I had watched the show and I thought I knew what I was doing. And I think the very first shot I set up, Manuel very kindly came over and was like, "This isn't the look of the show." And I was like,
wow,
"Okay, that's cool, cool, cool.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
What would you like? What can I do?"
And
Um,
were you sort of like going and finding stuff on that show as opposed to them saying, this is what I want from A, this is what I want from B?
no, I think again that one was Manuel had a very crafted look for the show. And
Uh-huh.
so, I recall him, coaching me through a bunch of setups. Eventually as you go on and you get an understanding of what you're going for, I would set it up and then yay or nay. But that was, artistically a very precise show. So they had a very important look for it.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this, and I mean, this was a while ago, so maybe it's not, you may not remember it, but day one of that show, when you go in, how do you figure out what your role is as the B camera operator? Because B camera is different on every show, right? I mean, some people want you right in there, and some people are like, nope, you sit back until we give you your orders. Or how'd you sort of figure out as a younger operator what your role was
Um,
supposed to be?
I knew Manuel, so I wasn't afraid to stand close and listen and sort of just be nearby. His assistants were also really, really helpful. They had worked with him on other jobs, so they kind of were able, because I don't think I'd worked with him. I think I did a day or two with Manuel when he was DP and I was day playing, but you just don't know somebody's way of working once they go from operator to DP. And I think the assistants were very helpful, kind of giving me pointers on when to jump in and not. I think pretty early on in the first day, I got in for a setup next to a camera, and that's when Manuel was like, "Yeah, this isn't the look. You have to drop down and you have to, find some foreground and do these things like
Yeah.
that." But
Yeah.
my thought as a B camera operator has always just to be kind of like a second AC. Like you're like a ball boy at the U.S. Open. You're close. You're waiting. You're paying attention. You run in and then you run out because it's always. I found the mantra of B camera is don't talk to me, don't look at me, go away. Where the fuck are you? I don't know if I can curse on this. I'm sorry.
You just did, and it's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, the minute you go to the bathroom as a B camera operator is when they want to throw B camera in. So
Right.
I've always tried to be as present as a B camera operator as I am as an A camera operator.
Yeah, I got you. No, that's great advice. And did you talk to Mike O'Shea ahead of time about what he was looking for from you, or did you just sort of go, I'll figure that out when I get in there?
You know, I think the only thing Mike told me is he doesn't do the last shot on a Friday night. So
That's
I
such a
had to be
classic New
prepared
York
to
thing. I
stay
love it.
late on Friday. And
That's great.
actually, that's how I first got my hands on a crane because Mike was like, "Hey, you said yes to the job and I'm going home." So,
There you go.
so I just
That's great.
remember sun's coming up, sweating, winter, just terrified. And they're like, "Well, you are the operator here and there is a crane shot."
What was it, a techno crane? Like what was the shot? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember what the crane was. I know it was more of a beauty shop. It
Okay.
was uh, a train yard and kind of like a, wide drop down, nothing intricate. He wouldn't
Okay.
have thrown me into the fire, I don't believe.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. So it was basically just like the establishing shot as the sun
yeah,
was coming up or something like that.
yeah.
Do you remember if that's your first crane shot? Do you remember, did you have to work out the move with your dolly grip, or did they sort of do it and you just kind of hung on and pointed the camera?
If you'd asked me then, I'd said I did it. If you ask me now, I'd say the dolly grip did everything.
I gotcha. Okay, no, that's fair. But that's one of those things that I think is it's really hard. Learning how to set up crane shots is a really hard thing for new operators to figure out because it's so sort of esoteric and it's not with a dolly move you can go I need the camera to be here and here and here and suddenly you have this whole new nomenclature that you have to use in the pickle and you've got three people and this and that and the other. So that's why I asked that. Do you remember at what did you do a lot of crane work on that eventually, or was that mostly with a camera?
Mostly a camera, definitely. I think I did a few like remote head. I remember doing a remote head in a it was up in a bucket, 50 feet up, and I was following a cab down the street or something like that. Another Friday night special.
That's pretty classic. I
Yeah.
actually, Mike O'Shea is out here in California, teaching a Steadicam course, and I just saw him last night. It's the first time we've actually ever actually met. So I
Oh,
think I might see him tonight, and I'm definitely going to bust him about this.
please, and send him my love, please.
I absolutely will.
Actually,
No,
tell
he's a
him bless your heart.
wonderful guy.
He'll know what that means.
Okay, bless your. I'm going to write that down. Bless your heart.
Please, yeah.
Um, that's great. So, how long did you just do that for a season, or how long were you on that
Yeah,
show?
then Marvel got pulled from Netflix, and that's when Disney was becoming a streaming service, and so all those jobs went away. But the grip, the key grip and gaffer from that went on to the Wu Tang show, and they recommended me for that. So I went from that right into the Wu Tang show.
The key group and the gaffer recommended you for that. That's a big recommendation right there. That says a lot.
Yeah, they're great. They were great. John Dolan and Tom Landy. And, again, and I should back up a little and say, as an operator starting out, that you should be friends with the key grip and the gaffer and the set dresser immediately. Those are the people who are going to make or break your day. And not intentionally, but if you can have them on your side, if you have a green dolly grip and the key grip sees that happening, or if it's just, a matter of asking for something to be moved and, finding the diplomatic way to do it, they should, you should work on those relationships immediately.
Yeah. And how do you do that?
Uh,
I put you on the spot
yeah.
because I don't know.
How do I do that? I don't know. I mean, how do you make friends with anybody? You ask them about themselves.
Yeah.
um I mean, obviously in a genuine way. I truly am invested in the people that I work with. I'm with them more than I'm with my loved ones. So I like to find things about the people I work with that I care about and can connect with.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the other things that I've found over the years is, and in talking to people through this podcast, would I think it's become crystal clear, is letting them know very early on that you respect what they do in the sense of, I know this is a big pain in the ass, but in two shots, that's going to have to move. And I'm just trying to give you a heads up, and I wish it didn't, but and sort of those kind of things where they realize that you realize that their work is important and not always easy, and sometimes not fun, just like all of our stuff, but that you're aware of it. And I think sometimes that goes a
Absolutely.
long way.
And as B camera too, you're back by the monitor. So you're with the DP, the key grip and the gaffer. You're paying attention. So you get a sense of how they work and when's a good time to approach, and if you can connect with them in those moments before you even get onto set.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, as the B camera operator, whenever you weren't working, you were hanging out behind the monitor, just watching over shoulders to see what was going on.
Absolutely, yeah, because I wanted to see how the shots were being framed, what comments were being made, what I could maybe jump in there and get.
That's a really interesting thing that you just said that I hadn't really thought of much before is the comments that are made. Because you do get all that ancillary information of like, oh, why is he holding that lamp in the background? And it's just like, okay, so they don't like when lamps are hung up like that or whatever. You get all those little pieces that,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, the thing that I always found out about B camera is it's sort of like it's constant reconnaissance on every level. And some of it's when you're working and some of it's when you're not working, but it's constantly just trying to figure out, okay, these two people work well together and that person doesn't work well with this person and the DP doesn't like this and the A camera tends to do this, but the director really likes that and all that other stuff. And then
Exactly.
hopefully you can actually pull all that in at some point, right?
Yeah.
So how long did you stay doing B camera before you jumped up to A camera?
Let's see. From Wu Tang, um, Manuel Billiter recommended me for Evil. So I did, I got called for Evil with Fred Murphy, who is just the best.
Wonderful. The
Just
best.
the
And by
best.
the way, Evil stars Katja Herbers,
Hmm.
who I who
And
I
Mike
did
Coulter,
Manhattan
yeah.
with, who's like the nicest woman in the world. I absolutely love her. She's so
She's
lovely.
great.
That's great people.
Yeah.
And Fred Murphy, you couldn't be with a better DP. That's
Uh,
amazing. It sounds like you've sort of been blessed to fall in with really really nice people.
I really, really feel that way. And I hope that I can continue that trajectory. You know what I mean? I feel like when you meet nice people, they recommend you to nice people.
I
And
think so. Yeah.
you just keep that going if that's possible. But
Yeah.
yeah, season one was Fred Murphy and Tim McGinnis.
Oh,
Tim
Tim McGinnis.
passed
Yeah.
this
Tim
year,
passed.
unfortunately. He,
Wonderful guy. And I know Tim. I worked with Tim on The Good Wife, where he moved
yes,
up with Fred, under Fred.
yeah,
And then I know Richie Guinness really well, as also his brother.
yeah,
Amazing
yeah.
keeper.
He
Yeah.
only did season one with us, and then Peter Jimenez came in, also a very awesome dude. So it's just a great crew there as well. I did 2 seasons with them as B camera, and then the pandemic hit. So
Yeah.
one season, then pandemic, and then back for another season as B camera. Then I went to Chicago to do what's now called Night Sky. I think it was called Light Years when we shot it. And that was, the DP was Ashley Connor. And I knew her through New York. She was actually my camera PA many years ago. I
That's
don't think
great.
she'll mind me saying that because she tells people that story too.
He's
She
done
brought
what?
me out as B camera. The A operator was from LA, and after a couple episodes, that wasn't quite working out, and so he left the show. And I sort of naturally assumed that I would get bumped up to A. I had done the tandems as A. I had always done A tandems. Um, and well, what I realized is Ashley really had to fight to get me as A camera for the remaining 4 episodes. And it
Because
always
of
comes
your
down,
experience prior to that, or what was
yeah,
the
so it always
reason?
comes down
Yeah.
to, well, they don't have previous A camera experience. And how are you going to get A camera experience unless they give it to you, right?
But
It's,
you'd had it on tandems a little bit, right? It
mhm.
sounds like, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just sort of a tricky political moment. And I think, I had actually started doing all the crane shots on that show because
Oh,
they were doing a lot of Steadicam and crane work at the same time. So she put me on the crane and then kept me on the crane. So I had a couple things going for me where the actors were J.K. Simmons and Sissy Spacek, and they both really liked me. I had done all the crane work for a while, and the crew and I got along together really well. And, for a moment, she was sort of like, well, what if we call you A, but you stay with this group or whatever? And I said, the reason that someone is A camera is because they have the A camera dolly grip with them. And I have a very up and coming dolly grip, and one day he's going to be a superstar. But right now, I need to be with that guy. Otherwise, I'm not A camera.
yeah.
And so she understood, and she went back and she came back to me and she said, "That's it, you're A camera." It was incredible.
Wow.
It was just a moment of someone. All you need to do is fight a little bit, I think. And some people are not willing to rock that boat. And Ashley was experienced, but that was her first big TV job. So there was a moment, I think, where she was, unsure how much she could push. And then I think she just said, this is unbelievable. Why should I have, this is our person. It should be Kate. And so she
It's
fought for
great.
it. And then at that moment, almost as I became A on Night Sky, Evil was crewing up to come back again for season 3. And crew was shifting a little bit on that job as well. And I was chatting with, some of the crew about what was going to happen and who was going to come in. And I just started to make it known that I wanted to be thought of for a camera on Evil. So I remember Peter Jimenez calling me, and we talked for a while. And I was like, I'm doing a camera now. I'm on the crane. I feel comfortable with this. I'm ready to do it. And he said, okay, great. Let me talk to Fred. And I think the next day Fred called me and he said, we want to offer you a camera for season 3 for Evil.
So that's great. I mean, so by the time you came on to Evil, how many episodes had you done as a camera on whatever the name of that show
Night Sky.
was?
I
Night
think I
Sky,
did
yeah.
4 episodes as the full A camera operator on Night Sky.
Okay, so did you feel like I get this established, like I'm an A camera operator by then, or how long did it take you to sort of settle into that?
I think you have to get yourself in the mindset of being settled into it right away. Otherwise, people aren't going to believe that you're the A camera operator.
So then that said, I'm going to ask you the next question. What does that mean? What do you have to get in your head to be the A camera operator?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. I think you have to believe that you can show up on set and make the shots happen, that people will trust you, that you understand what the DP and the director are asking of you, or if the DP and the director are asking you 2 separate things, that you can work with them to come up with one thing to shoot, that your crew is going to trust you and your actors believe in you and you can help steer the ship as best as you can until they call lunch or let you go home.
That's actually a great definition of it. Probably one of the best I've heard, because it's an esoteric thing, right? And it changes on every single set. I'm a
Yeah.
little shocked to hear that there are sets where the director and the DP want different things, but maybe we can talk about that later. But so what do you think? I mean, maybe you just answered it, but what do you think the biggest difference between being the B camera operator and the A camera operator is?
The dolly grip.
Oh, wow. Okay, tell me about that.
I mean, obviously I've had some amazing B camera dolly grips, but when you get to A camera and you work with somebody who is doing it day in and day out and helps you have an idea for the shots and is interested in being creative or is just so experienced that they understand what you're trying to communicate, it changes everything.
It's weird because what you said is right. Is like sometimes on B camera you do get stuck, not stuck. You get to work with a really good dolly grip, but the reality is they don't stay on B camera very long because someone takes them up and puts them on A camera, either on that show or somewhere else.
Right.
So the weird thing is has always been to me is, in a weird way, the B camera operator should probably be working with the better dolly grip because they don't know as much. But everybody's sort of learning together, so there's no question about that. That's a fascinating response to it. It's not. I don't disagree with it, but it does make the difference. Have you had a situation where you've been put with a dolly grip who you just don't gel together and you're not seeing eye to eye for whatever reason?
Yes, absolutely. And it might just be a matter of maybe my communication skills weren't good at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps I didn't know how to, you know, pull apart a shot and describe it to somebody else to get them to understand what I think we should be doing. Or,
Mm-hmm.
I think what's terrifying for a new dolly grip is coming up with framing themselves, right? So there's those moments where you know what the show is supposed to look like. You get thrown in there at the last moment. It's a very long lens. You're trying to keep a very heavy over. The actors are bobbing all over the place. and you're doing so many hand things behind camera that the actors will stop and say, "Is everything okay?" And there's nothing worse, right? You're just like,
Because you're
"I'm
flapping
so
your hands to the
sorry."
dolly grip over there. Yep, yep, yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep.
You don't want to distract the actors. It's the last thing I'm trying to do is, ruin a good take because I can't communicate well with my crew.
Yeah.
So if the dolly grip is willing, encouraging them to watch the monitor with you. It's tricky, it's there's such a pay disparity between operator and dolly grip, and I think that's
Hmm.
very unfortunate because what they do is just as important. And so for people who don't want to be a dolly grip but got stuck on the camera for that day, um, to ask them to pay attention when they could be returning a phone call or going to the bathroom or getting a snack, it's very difficult. And
Hmm.
I've had some very young dolly grips who are very interested, and I'll talk to them about it, and I'll tell them, go watch old episodes of the show with the sound off, and just think about the framing. And some of them
That's
think that's
perfect.
really cool, and others are like, yeah, okay.
It's so funny that you say that because you're not a lot. I haven't heard that from a lot of people. And one of the things that I tell younger operators is if you have a movie that's a good movie that you really really like that you've seen, like the first one I ever did this was Silence of the Lambs. I've seen it so many times I could tell you every single line. And one day I turned the sound off and I just watched it without the sound, and I totally got the story because I know the story, so that doesn't make a difference. But I started seeing all these things that I'd never seen before. And so I started doing it with other movies. But it's interesting that you say that because it's exactly right. Because when you take the sound away, you just go, oh, now it's just the visuals, and there's so much going on there.
Yeah, I don't know who the
It's a great
first
piece of
person was to
advice.
tell me that, but when Fred brought me in to interview me for Evil, he and I sat down and watched the pilot together with the sound off.
Really,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And he just sort of narrated through what he likes about it and
Hmm.
what yeah,
And we just talked about the
that
shots,
is
and he talked about movies that inspired the shots, like Night of the Hunter. And
oh
then he
my
had me go
gosh.
watch Night of the Hunter, and we talked about those shots.
That's great. What a gift to be able to sit with someone like Fred Murphy and have that kind of discussion. That's
Yeah.
incredible. So by the time you got onto Evil, it sounded like you were like, okay, I'm an A camera operator now.
Well, not till season 3. I did 2 seasons as B camera.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were A camera on no, I'm sorry, not by the time you got into Evil. By the time you went back to Evil after COVID as an A camera operator, it sounds like you were sort of established that you could do this at that
I
point
knew
because
I
you'd done
could
the
do it
four
because I
episodes.
knew I had the support. I knew,
Yeah.
again, going back to the crew, but Brendan Quinlan, our key grip, had my back. I had an amazing dolly grip, Rob McCleary. I had Bob Vecchio as my focus puller, Elisa Colley as my second. And all these people were rooting for me. I just
Hmm.
felt like they were with me. Like we showed up on day one, and Brendan would, stand in the, we'd rehearse and we'd do our thing. And then we'd talk about the shots. And then Brendan would look at me and go, "What do you want to do, Lady Kate?" And that said to everyone, we're letting
Yeah,
her tell us what to do. And when
that's
you have
unbelievable.
that kind of person who is important to the production give you their
Yes.
attention, everyone follows suit.
Yeah, no, it's you've been anointed, right?
Yeah.
That's all you really need, and it's really kind of amazing. And but there is something to be learned from that, which is as you're moving up, and I know I found this. One of the things is I would go from set to set, and my thing, I'm a steady cam operator, and I came up when you were just a steady cam operator and you came in as the steady cam operator. And truthfully, like you'd come in for your shot and a lot of the camera people would just like leave. They'd go, take a nap or something like that. So you were sort of on your own. But one of the things that I used to sort of try to figure out was like, who is the leader on that set? Who's that person that I have to get on my side that if they're on my side, everybody else is going to fall in line. And it's exactly what you were talking about,
Yeah.
which is, it seems sort of nefarious, but it's the truth. It's the truth. It's like you very quickly have to figure out how to get acceptance into the herd almost. And it sounds like it just happened naturally with you, which is fantastic.
Well, I wouldn't
But
say, definitely not naturally, but you work at it. What I just taught this crane operating class on the East Coast. And what I realized as I was making the what do they call it? Like the way to teach the syllabus. When I was making the
Oh, okay. Yeah,
syllabus
the
for the class, it
gotcha.
became
Yeah.
less about how to work the crane and more how to work with the people who are also on the crane with you. And I
Yeah.
just kept trying to drive that home is this is a team sport. You know, if you listen to what people complain about operators the most, it's this solo one man show ego. And it's just not that. We're all trying to make a good show and we all want to just get it, the best that we can, keep the show the way that it should look, and be able to go home to our loved ones at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
one person standing up there thinking that they're carrying the show on their backs, no one else is with you. They're like, great, go ahead, carry it, do it. Yeah,
I'll go out to the truck. You finish this up. Yeah,
exactly.
no, that's so that's very astute. And there's no question. One of the things that I talk to people all the time about is like, yeah, there's like panning and tilting and crane work and whatever, and I just assume that you know that or that you're learning that or whatever. But 99% of this is interpersonal skills and being able to read the room and being able to work with people who maybe you don't agree with and maybe you don't work correctly together. I mean, obviously when you do, that's easy. Like that's a no brainer because it just happens, right? But when you don't is when you have to sort of go, okay, how do I, how do I sort of manipulate this scenario so that we can all work together? And what am I doing wrong that's not working for you or whatever? And I know personally when, I'm not gelling with a dolly grip, if it's not my dolly grip or something like that, my first thing is, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? Because clearly I've screwed up somehow. So how do we fix this? And sometimes it's me and sometimes it's not. But I think there's a lot to that, yeah, it's not about moving the crane. It's about how you figure out how to move the crane together, and,
Exactly.
and
And,
working as a
everyone's
team.
allowed to have a bad day. You're going to show up on some show and someone could have gotten in a car accident in the parking lot and they're just, frustrated, and you show up and they're not interested in working with a day playing operator. And, you have to maybe gauge how much is it me being annoying and how much is it just life in general. But,
Yeah,
the best that we can do is ask people what their opinions are, ask them, how they would solve a problem. Um, People want to, I think for the most part, if you're on set, you want to be there. So
yeah,
why not?
yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully, there's some people I sort of wonder why you're still doing this, but that's another issue.
Yes.
Um, Earlier, you alluded to the just shockingly surprising idea that sometimes the director and the DP might want the operator to do different things. Not that this ever happens, but if this hypothetically happened, how do you deal with that as the A camera operator?
Usually what I'll do is I'll get what I think they want to do and we'll start rehearsing. And then if the director comes in and they said, no, this isn't what I'm looking for, I like to then immediately involve the DP and say, I'm so sorry, I misunderstood. I think what we should be doing is this, or what they're looking for is this. Is there a way that, perhaps there's a light now where we want to see or something like that? And try to sort of diplomatically, as best I can, involve them in the changes.
Hmm.
Sometimes they're sitting in completely separate spaces and you're getting information like the AD comes to you and then the second AC comes to you, and that'll go on for a while. And then I'll ultimately have to say, I'm so sorry. I have to approach somebody and we have to get together and we have to talk about it because,
Yeah.
this game of telephone is only going to get worse.
Yeah. No, that's I mean that's about the best you can do,
Yeah,
unfortunately. The thing that I always think about it is basically you don't want there to be surprises for anybody. You don't want to not do what the director wants without them knowing why. And what I always feel and other people have said is like when you get the three of them together, usually like I'll bring the dolly grip in too, so like there's witnesses to what's being said. But you said something really telling, which I think is smart, and I think is a sign of a good camera operator. Is you said, you know, obviously somewhere in there you go, maybe I'm not understanding this, or maybe I don't know what we want, because like you sort of take the hit yourself, because then it gives everybody else the out of like, yeah, you're an idiot, why didn't you do this? And then someone can just, deny that they ever said whatever. But that's part of it, right? Is sometimes you have to take that hit, because it's not going to be as bad on you as it is for the bigger team.
Right, exactly. And even too, if let's say, someone else needs a rehearsal, it could even be the boom operator needs a rehearsal. I'll often say, I really need it. And hopefully that'll encourage the AD to, motivate us to have a rehearsal. And when I find that we do the rehearsal, like 6 other people will come flying in the room like, yeah, we all need this rehearsal. So if
Yeah,
there's a moment where I can be like, yeah, I absolutely need this and it benefits all
yeah,
of us, then that's fine.
yeah. I was lucky enough, or maybe unlucky enough, to start a camera operating when rehearsal was not considered a bad word. And the thing that always kills me now is people are like, yeah, maybe we'll get lucky. And I always want to look at them and go, first of all, nobody gets lucky. If we get it, it's because we're all talented enough to pull this off without really knowing what we're doing. But that's not how we should be doing this.
I know.
Yeah. And the fact that you mentioned the boom operators, like, I often will do them simply for them, because they're like these one-man bands or one-woman bands that are out there with like nobody
Yeah.
in their corner. And you'll do the rehearsal, like, why was the boom in? And you're like, because we're rehearsing it right now. I know you're rolling, but we're basically doing it for the first time, and
Yeah.
figuring it out.
And truly, the number of times in my career that a boom operator has saved my life, or saved my butt on set. Let's not say save my life, but save my butt on set. I couldn't even begin to count. Even as a focus puller, I used to say, if you got thrown in there, B camera focus puller, and you don't know what the action is, follow the boom. They're going to
All
go
of
to
them.
who speaks next, and you pull focus to that. Just follow the boom. So, there's so many talented boom operators that understand lighting in a way that I think some DPs today never will. That you can gain so much from every person on set. They all have something that's going to help make your day a little bit easier.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I mean, some of my favorite things are actually to work with just great boom operators who enjoy, for lack of a better word, the hunt. Like, they enjoy the challenge of okay, you're going to throw this at me. All right, we'll figure this out.
Exactly.
It's just, that's the best, as opposed to, and it does happen, especially on TV. I think there's sometimes the boom operators that come in and they're doing the same thing over and over all day long, and they get a little bored sometimes, and I understand it. It's so you try to, like, have those reindeer games where you keep everybody involved. But I think part of being an A camera is a little bit being like a cruise director, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many pieces to hold in your head and so many people to remember to check in with. I mentioned earlier the set dresser, but they're so important and can really, help you move your day along so much. And so, to check in with the boom operator, check in with the set dresser, make sure B camera is okay, your dolly grip is good, and second team and all it is very much like walking in, checking, going through your checklist, making sure you've everyone is comfortable and that you're doing okay to get the day moving.
Yeah. Was that a surprise as you moved up, how much of that is involved in it, or were you aware of it just from watching A camera operators?
I think when you're on B camera watching A camera, you think you can do it. You're like, I can't believe they missed X, Y, and Z. And then you get there and, you realize, there's just so many things happening. It takes a while to get that down comfortably. Hopefully, you have the trust of your crew and they don't think you're being disrespectful because you forgot to ask, something at some point. But yeah, I think on B camera for sure, just as like when you're a B camera assistant and your cart is immaculate, right? Because you have time and you look over
Yeah.
at the A camera cart and you kind of like, I can't believe their cart is such a mess. And then you get to A camera and you realize why the cart is such a mess.
I haven't vacuumed my cart in 2 weeks. What's wrong with me? Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And,
Because you're
you know,
so
oh, that was my
constantly, no,
breakfast from 3 days ago
yeah.
because I never had time to eat it, you know?
But you brought up something interesting. I mean, there's so much stuff that you're bringing up that's like fascinating. When you do screw up, when you say we're ready and you haven't checked with the boom operator or whatever, how do you handle that?
Oh, I just immediately apologized because I remember as B camera being so frustrated when set is called and nobody's asked if I'm set. You know, so
Yeah.
I definitely get that I've made a mistake and, you know, plead for forgiveness.
I think that's key. I mean, and the reason I bring it up is I think it's something for younger operators to recognize is that number one, we all screw up constantly. Is one of the things that has come out of. I have some students and whatever who listen to the podcast and give me feedback, and one of the things that's come back is like the fact that we're all hanging on by our fingernails most of the time, and it barely works. But is that, I'll be in the middle of a shot and I'll realize that I've changed some portion of the shot, but I never mentioned it to the boom operator, and I'll sort of throw him a look or try to get him whatever, and then afterwards I'll just go over and go, I totally screwed you on that. I'm so sorry. And 9 times out of 10, because I do that, they won't care. I mean, well, they're not happy about it, but they get it, and I think that goes back to being just letting everybody know that you respect what they do and hoping that they respect what you do. I think there's so much to that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. What about working with actors? Do you have any tips for working with actors, working with tough actors? Working with easy actors is easy, but working with tough actors, have you had any situations? And you don't have to name the
You
actors
know,
or
I
the
think
show.
it all boils down to the same thing we've been talking about, which is respecting what they do. I think the most important thing I have learned is to give them their space when you know they need their space. And even if you have a friendly relationship with them, there's a place and time for that. And if you try and bring up an old joke or something that was funny, 3 setups ago, when you're now in their coverage and they're in the moment, you can really take them out of it. And that'll slow down the day. And, I so much respect what actors do. And, to have to do all the things that we ask them to do, like when the DP will come in and say, well, just ask them to blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, they're crying, but I'll try. And, you have to approach them and say, if you think of it, could you just sit in this weird way on the tiny half of the chair that has this piece of tape on it and only move your head to the left, never to the right, or we have to do this all over again. And don't bring your coffee cup up on this point or you block their face and go. You know what I mean? And you've
Yeah.
asked them to do the weirdest things with their bodies and they make it natural and they continue to act. And, if you can just sort of quietly communicate those things without taking them out of the moment, I think that's the most important.
Yeah, I mean, and it comes back to reading the room and just
Yeah.
understanding them. But when a DP comes in and says that, and you know that note is going to fail just because of where the actor is and whatever, what do you just go right back to the DP and go, I can't do that?
I try to give the note because what I don't want to happen is to do 2 more takes and that note was so important that we're not getting it and then the DP come
Yeah,
back to me and say, did you give the note and why didn't you
yeah,
give the note? So I'll always, if it's a very intense moment, I'll approach our first AD and then maybe they can have that conversation.
yeah.
Uh,
Or what do you think? How should we get this note in there? What's the best?
exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and particularly Dennis Doyle, who's amazing, will have that conversation and he'll go, I'm not telling him that. And I'll go tell the DP, I'm not telling him that. And then
That's
you're
the
like,
first. That's the first AD you're
yes,
talking
yeah,
about.
Dennis.
Dennis.
And
Okay,
and
gotcha.
so
Yeah.
then maybe you have someone who's in agreement with you that like this is not the best time right now.
Yeah. Because I have had those situations, and I'm sure you have too, where it's like, and to nobody's fault, but like some people get tunnel vision, and they're looking at the light, or they're looking at the couch in the background, or they're looking at whatever, and not just DPs, but across the set, and they lose track of the bigger picture, and it's just like, I can't go in and give them a note about holding the coffee cup. They're talking about, these
Right.
huge things. It's just not. And mostly when I will push back with that is not because I don't want to and it's uncomfortable, just because I have worked with these people close enough that I know that this is going to fall flat. It's probably going to spin them out, and we're not going to get what we want from it anyway. So we have to figure out some other way, to do it. But I think that's about establishing a rapport with your actors and knowing what works with them and what doesn't work with them, right?
Yeah. And
And
hopefully,
sort of,
you know, they understand where I'm coming from when I'm asking them these requests as well.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that comes down to not only asking for the requests if they're necessary, right?
Exactly.
Staying out of that as much as you can. And so that hopefully when you do come in with something, they're like, well, Kate never comes in with anything, so this must be something important.
Right, right.
And do you have any, I mean, I know I have something other people have, some people do, some people don't. Do you have something when you start a show, how you introduce yourself to the actors, how you connect with them? Is there anything that you specifically try to do to try to figure out? Because there is that beginning thing of going, are you a method actor? Are you someone who needs me to be involved in your performance? What do you need from me in this 3 feet that we have together?
I think I think I've always been very good at reading people. I think I was always an introvert in school, and I always spent my time people watching rather than engaging. And I think that's actually helped me as I've gotten older to sort of figure out how people like to be approached. And so I guess I haven't really thought about it that much, but I've always sort of I'll observe a little bit first. I never want to come in and be like, "Oh my God, Sissy Spacek, I'm such a fan of your work." Even though inside you're like, "This is a legend. I'm freaking out
Yeah,
right now." But
yeah.
you're behind camera. You need to ask them something. I generally try to introduce myself first, and then give them a quick note. And perhaps if there's a moment later that you can talk a little bit with them and begin to engage with them, that'll be helpful because then they remember you and they, want to work with you to make things happen. But I always approach tentatively at first. I never want to overwhelm. I don't want them to be thinking about me. Again, as invisible as ball boy in the U.S. Open as you can be, until you need to run in there, give a note, and come back out. I think is my
Hmm.
modus operandi.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's all that's all valuable stuff. And I mean, the thing that I've found over the years is there's no right. There's the way you want it to go, hopefully, and then sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, and it's
Yeah,
just this constantly amorphous shifting thing that you just have to keep on top of, because everybody's completely different. And I've even found that some actors, you know, they are one way, and then they can come in because they're having a bad day, or they just lost a big job, or they're excited about another job, or they have a tough scene and they're a totally different person that day, and then they're back to, so you just have to constantly be on your feet with that. There's no question about it. Yeah.
definitely.
What's the hardest part about being an A camera operator? What's the
Finding
hardest
the
part of
time
your
to go to the
job?
bathroom.
If I could tell you how many people have explained that, because do you know who Don Devine is?
I don't know.
Don's just a legend of an operator. Like, he did the last 2 seasons, I think, of Barry, and I mean, he's been around forever. And he and I were talking about it, and he goes, "Did you ever notice how, like, you'll set something up and it's all set, and you'll go, look, I'm just gonna go pee,' and you go out the door, and then you realize you forgot, you forgot to do something, and you come right back in the door half a second later, and suddenly, like, it's no longer a Western, it's now like a sci-fi movie, and the camera's like in a helicopter, and you're like, how did this happen?"
Absolutely.
But it is weird how that, like, you're sort of afraid to leave, because sometimes when you leave, like, decisions are made, and then you got to come back and you go, okay, what am I doing?
Yeah. I mean, I've had experiences where there's a PA standing outside the bathroom going, just take your time, but if you could just come back, we just need you right away.
It's so shockingly accurate. It is funny. And then the other part of it is, like, you're like, okay, I'm just trying to have a moment in the bathroom and you're talking to me the entire time.
Yeah,
Trust me,
yeah,
this is going to be faster if you go away.
right.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough right there. And what do you think? What do you think is the difference between a good operator and a great operator?
Hmm, that's a great question.
It's an esoteric question. I don't know what the answer is, but
Yeah,
I'm hoping if I figure it out, maybe I can be a great operator someday.
I think the difference between a good operator and a great operator is people skills. I think that, you know, you can have someone who is great at framing or panning and tilting and all of the things, but if they can't work well with others, it's just going to make everything unpleasant. So I think, I've worked with some people that I've been told for years how talented they are. And then you show up to the set and you're just like, they may be talented, but they are bumming me out. I think that's the
Yeah.
difference. I think, it's not that you have to be a people pleaser. And again, we all have days where we just don't want to use all the words that we have, but you have to be you have to be able to work with everyone else on set. It's just too much of a people facing job to come in and bring your big bad mood with you.
That's a great answer, and I think part of that is part of being a good A camera operator is you have to be the type of person who can motivate people, even and in the 14th hour to go. I know I'm just as tired as you, but we're going to make this better, and it's going to be great, and we're going to do this work, and we're going to push that dolly up that hill, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that quality is, but whatever it is, the people that I know who have that are the people that I love to work with. So I think that's very accurate. What do you? How much do you work with the AD, the first AD,
Oh,
and the second AD
constantly.
actually?
I mean, I think, again, in the list of people who you should connect with right away, I think they're right up there because they are in the DP and director's ear all day as well. So, as much as they can be on your team, the better. They're working with the actors, they're everywhere. So, you need them. And for sure, different ADs have different ways of running a set. I'm working with second team all day. Some ADs get very interesting about how you work with second team, right? Like they want to be the ones to call action on second team rehearsals or something like that. So even just getting into like those little moments of, can you trust me to move second team around? Can I, ask for this or that without it being offensive to you? Or, those moments. Yeah, the first AD is right up there.
Do you check in with them as the day is going, sort of going, okay, I see four more shots in this scene. How many do you see? Like, what do you know is what's coming down the pike? Do you try to keep involved in that?
I don't think I necessarily will do a shot count with them. I might check in and, you know, how much time do we have for this, or where do
Mhm.
you see us before lunch, or this or that. But no, I guess that's actually something I could probably work on is talking to them about shot lists. But generally, it's more about time. I think that I talk to them about.
Yeah, it sort of depends on the ADs because some will do it. I've had ADs who will, after we do the rehearsal and we're setting up the master, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, "All right, I'm seeing four shots here. What are you seeing?" And I'll sort of go, "Well, I see four, but I bet he's going to want an insert of this." And it's just their way of going. It's a gut check of like, is my timing correct on this? And then I have some ADs who want nothing to do with that. So
Right.
I don't think there's a right or the wrong, but I sort of early on I try to sort of lob a question in there and see how much involvement they want me to have with that. And then others I will say to them, just out of curiosity, how long do we have for this? Oh, we have 2.5 hours for the scene. And I'll look, we have like six shots. Are we going to be able to get all the six shots? And I'll go, yeah, I think this is what we're talking about. Because what I've found is that sometimes they'll get information from prep and whatnot that I have no idea about. So at least that way I can kind of keep an eye on and keep the team going. Hey, this is where we're going to be, and you're going to have to move the carts or whatever. And then sometimes the director will mention something to me, and they'll have no idea. So they're going, "Oh God, I didn't know about that." Like that, great, So it sort of goes back and forth, I guess. Yeah, and it varies. Have you done features, or have you mostly done TV?
As an operator, TV. As a focus puller, I did features.
Yeah.
A couple of really great ones that I think Frozen River, which went to it
Oh
was
yeah.
nominated for some Oscars, shot by
Yeah.
Reed Morano.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Is that
loved
the movie? That's
doing.
the movie that sort of put Reed on on the map a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Wasn't that the movie that kind of? Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that. That was a good movie. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I love doing
And
features.
I yeah,
Sorry.
and no, no, that's all right. But so you haven't operated on features, but do you see, as an assistant, you saw operators? Do you think there's a big difference between being on a TV show and a feature
The
from an
pace
operator
is
point of
just
view?
so different, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you probably get all day to do 3 pages, whereas on TV, you're trying to do 3 pages, in 2 hours.
yeah,
Um, in some ways, uh, I think there's a beauty to both because in my experience on the TV shows that we've been on, that's never stopped anyone from trying to create something beautiful and interesting, even if it doesn't unfortunately stay that way after it gets into the editing room. Not that what comes out isn't beautiful or interesting, but these
yeah,
long shots, that you work on. So, I feel like we still get to do really, complex shots, but just less time. And so it makes you better at it because you have to think so much faster.
yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that I think it's probably easier to go from TV to film than film to TV for that reason. Although the weird thing is, having gone and back and forth, you worked. I'm assuming you worked with Sean Bobbitt on reshoots for Shame.
I did, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I've worked with him a ton, and he's
He was
I don't
lovely.
know how you found him to be, but he's just and he's so smart. And Steve McQueen is, I mean, the
Yes.
two of them are just a dream to work with. But when I work with Sean, usually on the first day, he comes up to me and he reminds me that we're on a feature and not on a TV show, because I do a lot of TV. And it took me a little bit to figure it out. And I was like, oh, like we can actually take our time and go, I need all of that moved, as
Right.
opposed to going, I can tweak this a little bit and get away with it. And there's no right or wrong there, because sometimes you have to go, I have to sacrifice that frame because we just don't have the time for it. But on features you do. So you're
Yeah.
right. It's much more enjoyable.
I'll tell you
Um,
what I did with Shame. You've seen the movie?
oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, when they did it wasn't reshoots, it was additional shooting because they felt the movie didn't have enough sex in it, if that's possible.
How is that
And they
possible?
added that threesome scene. And I was the
Oh
focus
geez.
puller in the room for the threesome scene. And it was shot on film and it was,
Yeah.
400-foot mags. So constant reloads. So just like a lot of time of me and Sean and the actors in this very intimate setting I think in my memory all day.
And by the way, and actors who you weren't on the movie, so you've just met them for the first time. I mean, you
Correct.
and
Yes.
so yeah. So actually, you were an assistant on this, but what's that like for you to shoot a threesome sex scene with these big people you've never seen before? And
Yeah, I maybe because I'm a woman, I'm not really sure, but I have been, I think, in the room for more sex scenes than most people ever, because it comes down to who do we feel comfortable, and they always go, Kate. Yeah, throw Kate in there. We
yeah,
feel
yeah.
she's fine, throw her in there. And as a focus puller, I was always next to the camera. So I was just always in the room for these intimate moments. It's so, it's never what you think it will be. And you're always just trying, again, to make the actors feel comfortable. Hopefully there's nothing happening that you need to take personally or feel uncomfortable about because you're just watching, people emulate something so intimate and you're thinking like, is that nipple 3.5 or 3.8 away as you're pulling focus? Yeah.
You do start getting you start asking yourself very interesting questions
Yes.
that in the back of your mind, they're like, what am I doing with my life? That's yeah, no, that's a very good description of what it's like, because I've tried to explain it to people before and I'm like, oh, it's just tedious,
Yeah.
and it's usually like really hot, and
It's always the
yeah,
warmest.
I don't know why, but it's, yeah, they probably keep it warm because people don't have their clothes on or
Right,
whatever,
right.
but it's just like, it's so uninteresting in a weird way,
Yeah.
and yeah, and usually, like you said, and especially with, like, wide and tight and everything like that, or close and wide, that if it's handheld or something, someone's like 4.5 inches away from people, and it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bizarre thing. Yeah, and you don't do Steadicam or anything like
I do
that.
not.
You're do you find that that's a hindrance, or have you felt that that might be not having a specialty?
I don't know. I mean, currently it hasn't been a problem. I've never been a gear focused person. I've worked with some amazing Steadicam operators, and they're always talking about the latest version of the rig that's coming out and duplicate cables and so on and so forth. And I just, I totally check out in those moments. So
Clearly, you've never worked with me then, or when we did, you didn't realize that, because I am so non-equipment
I
oriented.
don't think we did any Steadicam together. I don't think we had
We
that
have, yeah,
opportunity. But
yeah.
yeah, there's a few really great Steadicam operators that aren't like that. Carlos Guerra, who's just a dream to work with,
Mhm.
by the way.
Yep,
But it uh, to me, it never really piqued my interest, and it's a big financial commitment to get the gear.
yeah,
So I just sort of took a gamble and said, I don't think I want to spend that money. I don't feel compelled to do it. That might relegate me to a life of B camera. I'm not really sure. But, I think the jobs that I've been on have been fine having B camera as Steadicam. And quite honestly, if you ask probably your A steady operators and your A focus pullers, a lot of people prefer it to be B camera steady because you get a break.
yep,
Anytime that a shot can be steady cam and your A focus puller can then take a breather, go to the bathroom, whatever, you're doing your crew a solid. If you're
yep,
continually saying, no, we can do that. I got that. Bring this in, do that, again, it's, you have to realize, your crew, they're human. And if you're trying to get brownie points by doing every single setup, it's only going to hurt you in the long run.
yeah, yeah. There are often times when I'm on a camera where I'll just go in and I'll go, can we just have B camera do this shot? Because I mean, they're very good, they're very capable, and we just, it'd be great for us to, like, be able to go to lunch,
Yeah,
20 minutes early, and just, grab a nap afterwards or whatever. And when you're working with the right people, they realize, like, yeah, because my thing is always, well, if I'm on A camera, if I'm on B camera, which I love, but if I'm on A camera, I don't want a B camera operator who's not as good. I want a B camera operator who's just as good and just happens to be the second camera, just because there has to be some hierarchy on some level. But
exactly.
my suspicion is, with the path that you've taken, you probably will not have any problem. And I like the fact that there are A camera operators who are not Steadicam operators. I think it's a better. I think there's something good, like you said, about having the B camera operator be the Steadicam operator. And
Especially because whenever there's a tandem, your B camera operator becomes your A camera operator. So shouldn't
exactly,
they
yeah.
feel just as comfortable jumping in and leading the charge for a couple setups?
That's exactly right. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, of course, egos get in the way, and the reality is there are some people who are just like, no, you have more experience as an operator. We want you on A, and I get that. So, it takes all kinds. But yeah. Well, Kate, this has really been fantastic. You have so much to share, and it's so great. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me, because, as I've said to other people before, you know, I've been doing this for 30 some years, and I can talk about when I made the jump to A camera, and I can talk to people who are, my contemporaries about the same, but it was a long time ago. So we're sort of grasping at straws, and you're past that point, but you're closer to it, and you obviously have a lot of introspection. So I appreciate that.
Thank
But it
you.
was great talking to you and getting to know you. I'll leave you with the final question that I pretty much leave everybody with, and let you take us out. basically anybody getting in now, anybody moving up to operating now, or Kate now talking to Kate, I don't know, 6, 8 years ago or whatever, what advice would you give to those people on how to succeed, how to get ahead, how to thrive, how to do well in this business?
Save your money first and foremost, right? Like when you start making good money and you think it'll never end. I always tried to live like I was still on those non-union $150 a day jobs for the longest time. I think that's super important. Save your money. I think also have patience. There's no right way to do this. And especially with the pandemic and now with the strike, it may feel like your time is not going to come. But I think if you are committed to it, if you're able to make it happen, you have to have a little patience to stay in this industry.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.